to be in the middle?
No.
Where's the book stand? Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajunulambita Bujjo Kanakavadato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunabhataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaudadai Pushpavanto Chitro Sandoto Munulo Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Suvala Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Shri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Shri Shri Raji Gopal Ki Jai Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai Gaur Nityananda Ki Jai Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande. Morning. Ready? Yes. We're continuing our discussion from a work in progress, tentatively entitled Sakya Pranay. And first chapter was some select verses from the 11th chapter of the 10th canto that deal with the beginning of Krishna's Seish Kumar Lila, the last part of his childhood, in which his Sakyaras pastimes begin to manifest. And we've heard how his flute manifested, his friends have manifested, and other figures. The beginning of his Yudhavira, his play fighting, and so on and so forth. Things that are developed in greater detail later in the Bhagavad and in the works, the Granthas, the Leela, really the Granthas, the texts of the Goswamis. The seeds for these things, the point is, are there in Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we come to the first verse of the 12th chapter, which is the beginning of 3 chapters that deal with the Brahma Vimohan Leela. This is something, a Leela that I've been lecturing on for the last more than 30 years. Before some of you were born, before I knew many of you. But it's a very significant Leela, and there's always much to be drawn from it. So this particular work in progress, Sakya Pranay, has focused on some select verses from those 3 chapters, which are 12, 13, and 14 of the 10th canto. And I began my book, Circle of Friends, with regard to the Prakat Leela narrative of Sakyarasa with this 12th chapter, rather than with the 11th, because although it also deals with the Seish Kumar Leela, it brings Sakyarasa out with great enthusiasm, and enthusiasm is very palpable in the texts, in the verses of Sukadeva Goswami. And one of the reasons for this is that the 11th chapter of the 10th canto, which we were discussing texts from, whereas I said the last third of the chapter, maybe text 35, the Seish Kumar Leela narrative begins, and Krishna begins to become calf herder. They've arrived in Vrindavan from Madhuvan, Gokul, and so forth. That chapter ends with a verse in which Sukadeva more or less summarizes, and so thus are the childhood, Seish Kumar pastimes of, of Ram and Krishna, summarizing them in a way by way of saying imitating monkeys and playing sports and amongst themselves and so on and so forth. So he really seeks in his explanation, in his Leela narrative to Raj Parikshit, the king, to bring a close. He's given a summary. He cited the slaying of Vatsasur, the liberation of Bakasur, and the nature of those Leelas, as I say, bringing into the scene of his pastimes, his flute and other aspects, udipanas and whatnot, relevant to Sakyarasa. So he seems to want to close it down with a verse, but Parikshit Maharaj's enthusiasm has really been sparked, if you will. And he's overwhelmed, emotionally overwhelmed by hearing about this, the intimacy of Sakyarasa and the intrigue of it all, which really, I think there's objectively you can say it really exceeds that, the intrigue of Vatsalya. Krishna's on his own, he's unchaperoned, he's in the forest. What secrets will be found there? What will he run into? And it's very adventurous and so forth. And so Parikshit Maharaj, who's in Dasirasa, he's the Parshad of Dwarka, but he's very excited by this. And the excitement is contagious. So Sukadev picks up on that, and he's compelled to say more about the closing of the Seish Kumar Leela, which is the beginning, again, of the Sakyarasa pastimes. And so he bursts, out in response with what we find here in the 12th chapter and carries through into the 13th and 14th chapter. 3 full chapters more about the Seish Kumar Leela, in which so much tattva, as we already explained, through the medium of a Sakyarasa narrative comes out, and through the mouth, or the 4 of them, of Brahma, who is, in the context of this narrative, finding out more himself about the very Sakyarasa that he was encouraged to pursue at the dawn of creation, when Krishna gave him the seed verses of the Bhagavad, when Krishna gave him the Gopal mantra. So the chapters are sometimes called, in a word, the 3 of them together, the Brahma Vimohan Lila. It could as well be the Vimohan means like illusion or bewildered, and Vimohan means extraordinary, supreme, very considerable bewilderment of Brahma. It could very well, in contrast, as well, I should say, be termed the special enlightenment of Brahma, which is an interesting point, because these 3 chapters are not accepted by all sampradayas to be part of the original narrative that the Bhagavatam consists of, but rather thought to be interpolation, something added later on, something like that. And amongst those that, at least it appears, felt that way, is Madhvacharya. Now, we're not sure about Madhvacharya. Madhvacharya is the founder of the Brahma, of the Madhva Sampradaya, really very important Vaishnava Sampradaya that emphasizes, in a sense, 2 very important features that are features of Gaudiya Vaishnavism also. The importance of the form of the Godhead, and the negative side, a rejection of Advaita Vedanta. I say that it's thought that Brahma questioned the authenticity, or excuse me, Madhva, the authenticity of these chapters in terms of their being authored by the legendary author Vyas, rather than being inserted later on, something like that, by some unscrupulous person for whatever reason, if you will. But we don't have any direct evidence that that Madhva felt this way. He has a very, very, very brief commentary on Bhagavatam. He doesn't say much about it, but obviously he embraces it as an important and authentic Vaishnava text. But in the chapters of the Brahma Vimohan Lila, he doesn't make any comment. His subsequent charges in the line, they have, some of them, made this point that we think these are interpolation. Madhva did comment on them, therefore, and then they would give other reasons as well. So we're not sure if Madhva necessarily rejected them in that sense. But one of the reasons that the subsequent charges in the Madhva line have reservations about these chapters is, well, from the very term that most prominently describes the Brahma Vimohan Lila, it's implied that Brahma, the very founder of the Sampradaya, was bewildered. That the Brahma was in illusion. He wasn't enlightened. He's the leader, right, of the whole Sampradaya. Madhva is said to have gone to the Himalayas and met with Vyas and shared his commentary with him. So his lineage goes directly to Madhva, to Vyas, and Vyas to Nard, and Nard to Brahma, right? So Pujapad Sridhar Maharshi emphasized this point, that they couldn't tolerate the idea of Brahma becoming bewildered. But as I say, we don't think it's such a good point, because the chapters could as well be described as the enlightenment of Brahma, the super enlightenment of Brahma, which is actually what occurred, as we see from his prayers. Of course, it makes an important point, as we discussed yesterday, that being Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam in a very powerful way, not just by one line in the Bhagavatam for the first canto, third chapter, where the phrase is found, the part of the line, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, which is, in a book of 18,000 verses, 335 chapters, how are you going to make so much out of one line of one verse? Jiva Goswami did that. He wrote a whole Sandarbha based on that one line of one verse, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. His reply to that is, well, sometimes big things come in small packages. He said the sutras of Vyasa are very terse and very short, but they have big meaning. They've been commented on by so many commentators from so many different angles of vision, right? But he wrote a whole Sandarbha about it, playing it out, and of course, the Bhagavatam itself, here in these chapters, explains the point in 3 chapters, given that chapter 12, the slaying of Aghasura is related. It's a narrative, so because of the slaying or the liberation of Aghasura, Brahma comes onto the scene, right? At least that's externally or overtly why he comes. Krishna is actually calling him to introduce him to a deeper understanding of the friendliness that he was initiated into, so to speak, at the dawn of creation, the Sakya that I mentioned there, and during the 9th chapter of the 2nd canto, where the 4 verses of the Bhagavatam are given from Krishna to Brahma, and Krishna initiates him basically, and encourages him to embrace a friendly relationship with him as he reaches out and holds his hand. Right? So an underlying or a deeper reason that Brahma is coming and is Krishna's calling him for such a purpose, to further, as his guru, further give him insight as to the nature of Sakyabhava, to introduce him to the Ashraya Lambana and the Vishaya Lambana, because he saw him at the dawn of creation. He was in Gopa Vesh, dressed as a Gopa, as described in Gopal Tapani, but he was like sitting like this with the Gyan Mudra, and not like this, holding rice and yogurt in one hand and putting food in his friend's mouth and taking food from their mouth, and having them take food from their mouths and put it in his mouth and so on. This was a little bewildering to him. That it looked like Krishna, his guru, but he was acting very peculiar, in a very peculiar way. Vaishnavera Kriyamudra Vignena Budhyaya. We should be cautious. The activities of the Vaishnava are difficult to understand because they may parallel those of ordinary people on the karma marg or even off the karma marg. So we have to trace out their motivation. What's motivating them? What's driving them? We have to look deeply and see. Driven or motivated by love of Krishna, it may cause one to cross over the Dharma in certain instances, or what would be the normal social religious protocol, right? And we find this in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his Leela repeatedly, when certain instances arose in which observance of the normal social religious protocol Pumsam paro dharma yato bhaktir arhoksaje oitaki pratihata yatma samprasidati. That's a very important section of the second canto of the Bhagavatam. This point is emphasized directly in this verse, as I'm citing, and indirectly in a couple of other verses. Shrama eva hi kevalam, and varnashram as a dharma. If it doesn't give rise to Vasudeva Kata, Ruchi, a taste, but it talks about Krishna, Shrama eva hi kevalam, is a waste of time. Atapum vedidisheshta varnashrama vibhagasaha. What is it? Another verse similarly. And what is the essence of Dharma? He said, Sangsiddhi, Hatoshanam. You want to talk about what is Dharma, you can say this, that, and the other thing. True, but the essence of it all really is what? Samsiddhi, the full perfection of Dharma is Hari Toshanam. What does that mean? Hari Toshanam, the pleasure of Hari. If Hari is pleased, that's Dharma. No matter what else anything says, any book, anywhere, what it may seem. If Hari is pleased by that, that is the essence of Dharma. So, so what's the point? So this is the Dharma, Ragmarg Dharma of the Bhagavatam. Brahma's coming into this now, learning about this, learning about the object of love as he appears to the friends of Krishna, how the personification of that love in the form of the friends appear, how they act, what are their anubhavs, how they feel, what are their sanchari bhavs, and what is the dominant nature of that sthayi bhav, sakirati. So on, right? This is so he's learning all these things. But the protests of the Madhvas predate the kind of responses from the Gaudiyas that they have not answered to. So silence is thought to be acceptance. Madhvas have not answered our replies, which are many. Jiva Goswami takes on this topic as he begins his commentary, as following Sanatana Goswami, who does as well, of this chapter, the beginning of the Brahma Vimohan Leela, with a number of arguments as to why these chapters should be considered original. and how they're found in different areas where the Bhagavad has been rendered in local vernacular or in different parts of India and so forth. All over it's found. He cites, for example, a verse from the third canto of the Bhagavatam, where Krishna is described as Agabido or Agabit. It means the slayer of Aga. So in the third canto, he's mentioned by this name. So there must be a Leela in the Bhagavatam in which Agasura is slain, right? Here is a Leela. So he gives many evidences. This is a substantial one in my estimation for the authenticity, if you will, of these chapters. And of course, an objection you could argue on the part of the Madhvas is also based on the philosophical implications of the chapter, which again come out very loudly. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, this tattva, right? It's one line, right, in the third chapter of the first canto, but here are 3 chapters about it, bringing it out, and then Brahma's 30 plus verses, right, making this point and related points. And Madhva, in his commentary on the Bhagavatam, when we go to the first canto, the 3rd chapter, where Krishna's tu Bhagavan, this line is found, well, he does not explain it like Jiva Goswami does. He doesn't see it like that. He's a devotee of Krishna also. The Udupi Krishna, who is thought to have been the deity of Rukmini, that was gifted to Madhva, who on the shore of the ocean, by his power, mystic power, helped a ship that was in a storm land safely. He is, after all, thought to be a partial incarnation of the god Vayu, the wind. And I think Bhima Sane also. Right? So when the ship landed safely, they attributed their success in landing to his mystic power, and they gave him a big hunk of tilak. I guess their cargo was not anything more valuable than that, but anyway, inside the tilak was something very valuable. It turned out to be a deity in there. It was unknown. It was thought to be the deity of Krishna that Rukmini worshipped in Dwarka. This is the deity that's been established in Udupi. And in the Madhva Sampradaya, I think they have 9 moths. I've never been to Udupi, but 9 moths, like in a circle around the main moth. And each of the 9 moths has an acharya. And these acharyas are chosen in childhood through astrological calculations and so forth. This person will be suitable to be an acharya. So they're brought up as an acharya, as the system. And then each acharya does whatever they do, which involves, among other things, raising some funds and so forth, for 9 years until they get the chance. Now they, in a rotation, they will do the Seva Puja for the main moth, for Udupi Krishna. And all that they've raised, the surplus that they've gathered, goes into his service. His deity worship begins at 4 in the morning, and the Seva Puja is finished around noon. So very heavy emphasis on the form of Krishna and the corresponding anga of bhakti, which is Archan Seva, right? Very elaborate. Not holding a stone, weeping, bathing with your tears, as Mahaprabhu did for Govardhan Shila. A very elaborate worship of Krishna in Dwarka, who, after all, is a prince there. He's known by the Adus to be God, right? And so the rotation goes, and every 9 years, one of the acharyas gets his turn there, if you will. Very stalwart school of Vaishnava Vedanta, and very, very strongly in opposition to Advaita Vedanta, so much so that it is the Vedanta is termed Dvaita Vedanta, the opposite of Advaita. That's a long explanation of what is his philosophy and so forth. But he doesn't explain Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam the way Jiva Goswami does. In fact, in a way that Jiva Goswami differs from considerably. And because these chapters make it difficult to embrace Madhva's explanation of Krishna's Tu Bhagavan Swayam, there's reason to believe that this is also why his followers rejected the chapters. Again, he was silent on it. So he may have had his purpose to be quiet, let the Gaudiyas come, and they will bring it out. Can't say everything all at once. I'm mainly involved here in defeating Shankar and establishing supremacy of Krishna. To go into all these theological details as to the difference between Krishna and Narayan and so forth. Shankar doesn't even believe in the eternality of Vishnu, period. So let's start there. Let's start there. Let's establish this point, right? Let the Gaudiyas come and give this nuanced understanding of the variegated nature of transcendence and the aesthetic, if you will, superiority of Krishna, his capacity, his greater capacity than Narayan, let us say, to accept different forms of wise love on the part of his devotees. So, anyway, it's an important chapter, and it's a chapter that's in question within some Vaishnava schools, and other Vaishnava schools besides ours also accept it. Quite a number of them. Jiva Goswami cites a number of ancient commentaries, all who've accepted, and of course the principal commentator that the Gaudiya commentators follow is Sridhar Swami. Sridhar Swami was an Advaita kind of the strategy. One may say, I don't believe that was his strategy, but he himself was a devotee of Narasimhadev, and the Gaudiyas accept him in this way, and amongst them, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in particular, commentary of Sridhar Swami, he very much embraced. And so, our Gaudiya commentators, Sanatana Goswami, the seminal Gaudiya commentator on Bhagavatam, and later Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and Rupa Goswami didn't comment on the Bhagavatam. Jiva did, Sri Jiva Goswami, but Rupa Goswami's other texts draw from Sridhar Swami and so forth. He accepted these chapters as authentic. So Jiva Goswami gives his reasoning, but they are, as I began, very extraordinary from the Sakyaras point of view, because Sakyaras really explodes here at the end of the Sesh Kumar Leela within the Brahma Vimohan Leela. Not only does it explode, but then Brahma reflects back on it, and the virtues of Sakyaras are not left unglorified, or they're praised considerably by him in his tribute to Krishna in the 14th chapter. And I should say also, this Bhagavatam, what it's about, it has verses that could be interpreted one way or another. Is it an Advaitin text? I don't think so. But then again, it says, this book is about Kaivalya. The prayojan of this book is Kaivalya, which is a famous word of that later in the 12th chapter, 12th canto, famous word of the Mayavadis, or Kaivalya, they interpret that to be oneness with Brahman, right? Based on Sridhar Swami's commentary, of course, Jiva Goswami takes that apart and says Kaivalya means love here. Love means oneness. If you say I love you, you know nothing about love, because in love there are not two, there is only one. Of course, it's a dynamic one, as I often said. You and I become we. We're both there, but we're one. That is love. So, of course, Jiva Goswami gives a more in-depth explanation of how Kaivalya means love. The prayojan, the goal that the Bhagavatam speaks about is this love, and the love in Braj, right? So, the extent to which, as I say, this this particular type of Braj Bhakti, Sakiras, um, it's exciting, is really very much brought out in these chapters as it prepares us to enter into the Poganda Leela, which follows. And so, interestingly enough, as I began, the last verse of the 11th chapter of the 10th canto, where Sukadeva began to wrap up and say, okay, and such is the nature of Krishna's Seish Kumar Leela, more or less what he says, as if to end and proceed from there, but sensing sensing a bomb, a forest bomb, right? Sensing the excitement of Parikshit Maharaj, having been introduced to these Sakiras pastimes and subsequently hearing about their nature, Sukadeva could perceive he wants to hear more about this. And so, in the depth of his own samadhi, he brings out these 3 chapters. And so, interestingly, in this regard, the last verse of the 11th chapter, again where Sukadeva kind of tries to wrap it up, is repeated verbatim at the end of the 14th chapter. So he tries to wrap it up. Parikshit's enthusiasm won't allow him to. It's driving the whole affair. So you should understand you have a part in all of this. It's not just somebody sitting here talking. He or she will only talk as much as you're listening. And drawing out, right? It's an equation. Here and the chanter, here and the chanter. There's no here, there's no chanter. You have no ears for this? What will the chanter say? What will the speaker say? Parikshit Maharaj's questions are as important as Sukadeva's answers, right? And his enthusiasm. After all, he's fasting from food and drink. He's pretty enthusiastic. He forgot about eating, forgot about sleeping. So, perceiving this again, so Sukadeva Goswami continues. So he's, okay, we'll continue. And he continues in a big way for 3 chapters, and then the same verse that he said, to conclude the Seish Kumar Leela is the end of the 11th canto, he puts it at the end of the 14th chapter. 11th chapter, at the 14th chapter. And then 15th chapter begins with a new section, the Poganda Leela, right? The boyhood. So again, and this is why we have an extended description, 3 1/3, let's say, chapters about the Seish Kumar Leela. These are some of the reasons. Reasons for tattva, reasons for emotion, and so forth. So we begin, and that means with chapter 12, verse 1. Come on, please. Thank you. Kvachidvanashaya mano dadat brajat prata samutaya vayasya vatsapan prabhodayan tringabravena charuna vinirgato vatsa pura sarohari. So Kvachit, he continues. One day, Vanashaya, to picnic in the forest, Manodadat. Manodadat means Krishna made a decision. Now this is the main event here. The main event. There are many, many events that occur in this chapter. But Krishna made a decision that he thought about it and then he went forward with it. He acted on it. We will take our breakfast into the forest. In other words, we will leave early. We will leave early. So this is enthusiasm. We will leave early, taking our breakfast with us. In the previous chapter, you may recall that I cited a verse which explains what does they say there. I think I may have noted it here. Let me refer to that. Avidure Prajabhuva. That they're calf herding was abidure, from Vraj, not too far. Not too far. They would go out, not too far from parental supervision, and come back for lunch. And they would take their breakfast at home also. First they would take breakfast, they go out for a little while and come back. So the excitement here is not only will we leave early and we'll take our breakfast with us, but it will serve as our brunch. And we'll skip lunch. And we'll go deeper into the forest and explore the secrets and the adventures there, what can be found. So he's very, in other words, his Sakyaras is really, really coming on. Every day they go into the forest. And it's so fascinating that every day they make a pact. They get together and they all put their hands in the circle. They make a pact. 1, 2, 3, brudge. Break, like that, like they do in the sports, right? They say, we will make a pact, all of us. We'll never leave here. We never leave this forest. And then, of course, by the force of Vatsalyaras, they all come back. And again, they make a vow. We'll never leave. The vow that they make, the promise they make, the commitment they make to themselves just serves to say how fascinating the forest leelas are. And these are, of course, so central to Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And Krishna's staying out a longer period of time now, which of course becomes very relative to the Gaudiya perspective and the window of the Leela that the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya affords us entrance into the Leela through. After Krishna has reached Kishore, before he goes to Mathura, stop, replay them now, day after day after day. All the demons have been killed. No more slaying of the demons. And Krishna's, central to this is Krishna's forest pastimes. To give an example of that, there is nowhere in which we find these extraordinary insights into the midday pastimes of Krishna at Radhakund in his rendezvous with the gopis. This is a specialty of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. It has brought this out to the world, the midday pastimes. So to stay out longer is moving, as they say, in that direction. The main focus of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas is in the forest, where this cowherding goes on, where the intimacy of friendship is found, and where the romantic love of Krishna is found in the day, in midday, in the midday, in the face of the sun. How can you do that? In broad daylight, Krishna meeting with Radha. At night, okay, you can sneak out, but in broad daylight, and all that has to take place for that to happen. Hello? Come on in. Somebody on our roof. Maybe a big iguana has landed there, wants to hear. Distracting us a little bit. A monster. No, not here. So here, what is the verse? So he's. This is the main thing, Krishna's desire. Many, many things happen here. They're all secondary to Krishna's desire to more fully express or to facilitate the pursuance of Sakyarasa. Go early, stay longer, and so forth. But something curious at the same time is there, and it seems a little hard to put together. How can Krishna be so interested in further pursuing Sakyarasa and facilitating it, the excitement of it and all, but to proceed as he does, Kachit Vanasaya Manodadat Rajat, Pratasamutaya Vayasi Vatsapan, with his friends, his comrades, right? One day Hari decided to dine in the forest, to picnic with his friends. Thus he rose early, woke his peers, companion calf herders, with the beautiful roar of his Mandaragosha, and then, keeping the calves ahead of him, he departed from the cowherd village. There's something embedded in this here. Jiva Goswami says that the words Vinigraha Vatsa Purasaraha means that he departed with the cows in front. He says there's a implication in this here, and it should be seen as what? Vinirgataha. He says Nirgataha. Visheshena Nirgataha. That the word Vinirgata, departed, should be understood to mean Visheshana Nirgata. That they went Visheshana, in a special way, in a peculiar way. Is the peculiarity that the cows are in front? No, that's normal. That he went with his companions? Well, of course, that's normal. But there's something peculiar about it, or we could say special about it, different about it. And what is that? Very significant. That is that Ram is not mentioned. So it's embedded in the language for the seers, for the Rasikas. Ram is not with him. So then the whole Gaudiya explanation comes. Why Ram was not? I mean, you can imagine. It's one thing. Oftentimes, Krishna would be mentioned without Ram because it's understood Ram's going to be with him. Often they're mentioned together, but sometimes Ram's not mentioned. It's understood. Well, given the poetry, his name is left out, but early, and blew his Mandaragosha. Mandaragosha is the name of his conch shell, often described in a broad way as a buffalo horn. In a more detailed way, it's a horn of a black elk, and it's a gold embossed with jewels, and it's Mandaragosha means roaring thunder. So it sounds like the roar of thunder, but here it's also described as charuna, Tringa Rovena Charuna. Charuna means very beautiful, very beautiful. Krishna's horn is different than his flute in that his flute tends to knock everybody out and chant them. It causes the river to stand still, and the hillside to flow like a river. So it's bewildering. It causes them to act in confusing ways or to pass out altogether, right? But the horn is waking everybody up. The horn and typically, of course, in a typical day, it's Balaram who blows the horn. Balaram stands on a raised platform, blows his horn, and what happens, of course, secondarily, is that all the cowherd boys are awakened, all the calves, or in this case, calves instead of cows because it's early, are awakened, and they come in the millions. Millions of cowherd boys come, and millions, each of them has millions of calves, into the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. How can it contain all this? The courtyard itself becomes Sakiras, contains everything. All these feelings, these sentiments. So typically, of course, as the Leela progresses and is fully developed in terms of the apricot Leela that we want to enter into, Krishna would have been out through the night, right? coming back just before the sun rises to try to catch a wink of sleep before the day begins again. So why is Balaram standing on a raised platform and blowing the horn? Balaram doesn't participate directly in Krishna's romantic leelas for the most part in the Bhagavatam, except around chapter 65 when Krishna sends him to Vrindavan to pacify the devotees and assure them that he will return, and at that time he speaks with the gopis. That's a very special event. But otherwise, typically in Vrindavan itself, he's not involved in those affairs. But it's not that he doesn't know about them, and not that he doesn't approve of them. As I said before, he's the Maryada Purusha, so he makes sure that Krishna's behaving properly. Therefore, when Krishna ate dirt, he turned him in. Mother said, did you eat dirt, Balaji? Yes. Oh, Krishna was upset with that. Why'd you tell her that? Told on me. That is his role. But if that's his role, why doesn't he tell, and he knows about it, given his omniscience, why doesn't he tell Krishna's meeting with the gopis at night? Because he approves it. Actually, everyone approves it in the Braj. I think even, what is her name? Jatila. I think she secretly approves it too. Krishna is very charming, but officially, that can't be the position they take, right? And as such, the possibility of parakya manifests. But the point is, why is Balaram waking everybody up? Because he comes, he stands on his platform, and the sun is waiting for Balaram's horn to rise. Because Balaram's saying, it's all clear. It's all clear. Krishna's safely in bed. Radha's gone home. You can come up now. Mitra. Mitra, you can now rise. Mitra is a name for the sun, and it means friend. So the sun is a friend, right? Therefore, it's also possible at midday, in the heat of the main full focus of the sun, for this meeting of Radha and Krishna to take place. Not without some intrigue, but the sun is not going to get in the way, but rather help to facilitate that by accepting worship in the form of the sun god. And of course, that's a beautiful midday apricot Leela that we're not going to go into the details there. But Balaram is blowing the horn and he's saying, it's all clear, you can come up now. And the gods, sun god is following the god of gods, Balaram and his cue, right? But here we are, not that far along in the manifestation of the development of the Prakat Leela. We're only in Krishna's Sesh Kumar Leela. Still, Balaram's blowing the horn, getting practicing for the future, you could say. But Krishna has blown the horn, so it's very peculiar. Because Krishna has blown the horn, that in itself is peculiar. And the Sheshana Nirgata, the leaving, the departing, is peculiar in that Ram is absent. And Ram is absent because he's not blowing the horn. Krishna is. And as he does, as I say, so many cowards come. And the horn, again, different from the flute, right? It tends to be a call for service, whereas the flute is a call that it makes us unable to do service, at least externally, right? And pass out. Therefore, Balaram is a little more famous for blowing his horn, which he does every day, which is, he is the very embodiment, right, of Sakirasa, which is a seva, right? It's a kind of service, right? An intimate top form of service. And he is arguably the best servant of Krishna, right? Like the Guru. The Guru is very special. What does it mean? It means he's a very good servant. It means he's a very humble servant. Oh, I don't know if I want to be a guru then. We should make that clear to anybody who wants to be a guru. Yes, ladies can be gurus, men can be gurus, everybody can be guru. What does it mean? How do I dress? Where do I get my seat? What will my paycheck be? Oh, You have to dress like this. With this disposition. Trinadapisunijena to aurapisation. Guru is the best servant. Best servant. This is Balaram, right? He is said to be, Balaram is Bhakta Abhiman Mool Sankarshan. He's the root. Sankarshan is another of his names. Sankarshan is the root of the ego of the devotee in every devotee. So he blows the horn in the morning, calling all the cowherd boys to this particular type of seva, to rise and assemble in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. So one day I'll read the verse again. How he decided to dine in the forest, to picnic with his friends. Thus he rose early, woke his peers, companion calf herders, with the beautiful roar of his Mandaragosha, and then, keeping the cows ahead of him, he departed from the cowherd village. Now the reason that Balaram is not present is, of course, this has all been brought out by the Gaudiya Acharyas. Right, so, like Mahamantra asked me, are we reading the same books? Because I read those books and I didn't get those things from there, right? So there's much hidden in the text, right? So much. Therefore we need sadhusanga. What our acharyas have brought out, they're simply doing what Narada told, as I mentioned the other day, Vyasa to do. Rewrite that book in such a way with the emphasis on bhakti. So they are looking at the book with the emphasis on bhakti and drawing from all the sacred scriptures, writing their commentaries in their own books, which are really serve as bhakti shastras in and of themselves. The emphasis on bhakti over gyan, karma, yoga, in terms of its efficacy, in terms of its reach into transcendence, in terms of its generosity, and that in particular with regard to the descent of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, so from their commentaries, then we find out such details. That Ram was not there. It's important, significant if we're pointing out. And where was he? So he was delayed, right? He was delayed because of astrological calculations pertinent to his birth, which required certain rituals would be performed on that day, and by the strength and the power of Vatsalya Rasa, he would be restrained from the participating in the exuberance, extraordinary exuberance for Sakyarasa that is rising in Krishna's heart with his decision. Today, we will take our lunch with us. Prepare it the night before, Mataji, Rohini Devi. Prepare it the night before. Have it all ready. And no one could object, right? So this is the main focus. So many things happen successively in this chapter, and the description of them of that is, in brief, found in the first verse. He had a desire. He acted on the desire. This is the main thing. Subsequently, the cowherd boys were awakened early. The cows were awakened, and they assembled. And he departed in an extraordinary way. The result of which is that is huge. The secondary result. One of the secondary results is what? Is that something about Ram will be known that wasn't known. Because Ram was not present for subsequent Leela that took place on this day, the deliverance of Aga, Ram was not there. This is the point. He was not there. Why he was not there? Well, because he's held back for astrological reasons, as I said, by the force of Vatsalya Rasa. But also, that something about him and his bhava may be known. It's not known yet. What is that? That he has Sankul Bhav. The fact that he has in Sakya Bhav is very clear from the previous chapter. He and Krishna together are herding calves and so on and so forth. Right? But there's more to the makeup of his emotional reality. He is in Sakya Bhav because this is prominent, but his Bhav in the broader sense is called Sankul. So in Sankul means along with the dominant rasa by which one may be defined, Asaka, for example, other rasas within Sambandhanuga may be combined and they may show themselves at times. So Balaram has Sankul Bhav and his Sakya rasa is packaged together with Dasya and Vatsalya. So we don't know that yet. But because he's not present, that will come out. In chapter 13, right? That will come out. How is that? Because after Krishna kills Aghasura, liberates Aghasura, and Brahma comes on the scene, tries to steal the calves and cowherd boys. Krishna manifests himself as the calves and the cowherd boys. Balaram doesn't know this is happening. So for 1 year, this Leela is going on. But where he sees something happen at a certain point in the year, towards the end of the year, he sees unprecedented enthusiasm on the part of the parents for their sons and the cows for their calves. And he says, something crazy is going on here. Something very special is happening here. He tries to figure it out. And then it becomes clear to him, and Krishna reveals to him. He understands. And he shows what? He shows his Dasya Bhav. He shows his Dasya Bhav. He says, oh, this is only possible by the power of my Lord, Krishna himself, by his mystic power. Such a thing is possible. This is his excellence and so forth. So there, late in the 13th chapter, the fact that Balaram has Dasya Bhav as part of his emotional component comes out. Later in the 15th chapter, which is the Poganda Leela, then you'll find a verse also where his Vatsalya Bhav also comes out, as Krishna begins to worship him as his guru, massage his feet and so forth, render menial service to him, and he accepts it. So in between these Brahma Vimohan Leela chapters and in the 5th chapter, we find out, well, Balaram is a Saka, but he combined within that are in a slight way, kind of a tinge of Sakya, of Dasya and Vatsalya, of which these two, along with Sakyaras, are what we call Sambandha Rupa Bhakti. That one division of Rag. Sambandha Rupa Bhakti, the other division is Kama Rupa Bhakti. The way to enter Sambandha Rupa is Sambandhanuga Bhakti. The way to enter Kama Rupa Bhakti is Kamanuga. Both Sambandhanuga and Kamanuga, in a broader sense, are called Raganuga, following the rag of those associates. So you can see here from the first verse, the absence of Ram is significant in a number of ways, and it reveals something to us about him that we didn't know otherwise. Many things accomplished, right? In one verse. And Eva Goswami says, following the lead of Sanatana Goswami, and he underscores it that much more in his commentary. These chapters of the Brahma Vimohan Leela are one wondrous thing after another, after another, after another. Each one becoming more and more wonderful, he said. And the wonders of here, Jiva Goswami speaks very affectionately for it. You can very strongly feel in his commentary, oh, he's really resonating with these Leelas more than he did with the Vatsalya Leelas. They're beautiful too, no doubt, but he's resonating with them. So this is a thing and a feature of the Bhav of Srila Jiva Goswami that we talked about before. He is Vilas Manjari, but in all of his writing, amongst all of these great devotees in Manjari Bhav, we find some affinity for Sakyaras comes out in him. Again, he grew up as a child worshipping Krishna and Balaram, so he has a strong affinity for them. He goes so far as to say in his Priti Sandarbha that the Kanta Bhav, which means the Bhav of Radha, really, and other such group leaders, but we focus on Radha for good reason, is mixed with Sakya. Very, very strong statement. So, those very special chapters, and what else? Here we begin. Um, so, anyway, yeah. So, as this verse describes, at the sound of Krishna's horn, countless herdsmen and that many more calves, each boy with his own herd, arrived and departed with Krishna, delighted by the idea of dining in the dense forest, which would allow them to remain in the woodland that much longer. And day by day, the hours of the herding increased. Herding that was more of a pretext for play than anything serious. Describing their play, which is now what follows the subsequent verses, the intimacy of the Sakas shared with Sham, Sukadev on the verge of Pralay. He's on the verge of passing out. This is a Sattvika Bhav. This is where we first find this in Bhagavatam. I mean, it's the only place we find it. He's on the verge of passing out, and at the conclusion of these, in the midst of these Sakyaras pastimes, he actually does pass out. Right? So Sukadev, on the verge of Pralay, rhetorically praised the Sakas past, that which they must have done to arrive at such Sakya Pranay. So we'll hear about that. A famous verse of the Bhagavatam, where Sukadev is overwhelmed by the intimacy that this Sakyaras has afforded some special souls. How did they get there? How did they enter into this situation that we're talking about? And the idea that prospect is open to us, we should be on the verge of Pralay, right? Sukadeva Goswami ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavat ki jai, Shishiraji Gopal ki jai. Good. Any question? Yes.
As far as the Srimad Bhagavatam goes, in this conception of adding chapters or
And but we do that in the context of other literatures. And this is what Gaudiya Vaishnavism literature is about. All the literature of Gaudiya Vaishnavism is really expanding on the implications of the Bhagavatam, the Gaudiya's pastime leelas, books like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu and Ujjwal Nilmani and Laghu Bhagavatamrita, Brihat Bhagavatamrita. So what we see as the standard in Gaudiya Vaishnavism is new books, if you will, that are an extension of the Bhagavatam or commentaries on the Bhagavatam. We don't add chapters and say, but in that sense, in the former sense, by the fact that there are unlimited commentary and other books that can come out of it and so on and so all or around it, right? Like stars around the moon of the Bhagavatam, right? It speaks to the virtues of the Bhagavatam, the glory of the Bhagavatam. But so much can be written about it. I mean, how many commentaries are there on the Garuda Purana, or the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, even the Vishnu Purana, Padma Purana, which there should be more commentaries because there's so much about Bhagavad. There's Sattvika texts, and Krishna's Leelas are mentioned there, but nothing like the Bhagavatam. I mean, there's just no comparison because of what it is and how attractive it is. And this is the center of it all, this Brajalila narrative. So there's much to be said about it, but we don't add a new chapter to it in a sense. We add a new book to it. Right? We add a star to the moon of the Bhagavatam, which only helps us to appreciate us that much more. That was there and we didn't see it. Goodness. Therefore, Bhagavatam tells us, Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam. Bhagavati Bhaktama Bhakti 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 Nati. So we have to pay close attention to understand the Bhagavatam. I many times told the stories about the student who was sent to Benares to learn the Bhagavatam and came back and the father, or learn to get an education. His son came back and the father said, so did you get an education? Benares is a place of learning. He said, yes, I studied so many books. I got a very good education, Father. Thank you. He said, did you study the Bhagavatam? He said, I think that was in the course there. I don't remember that. What was it? What book? Srimad Bhagavatam. No. He said, then you don't have an education. Go back to Benares and study Srimad Bhagavatam. So he went back, he studied the Bhagavatam, and he came back, and Father said, so did you study Srimad Bhagavatam? He said, yes, and now I understand. Now I have an education. I could have studied so many other books, but just this one book alone is a more, I understand more now about what is the nature of being in reality. So Father said, so you've understood the Srimad Bhagavatam? He said, yes. He said, go back to Benares and study Bhagavatam again then. So he went back, he studied the second time, he came back, and then his Father said, so have you understood Srimad Bhagavatam? He said, now I understand why you told me to go back a second time. Yes. Oh, now I really understand Srimad Bhagavatam. Thank you so much for sending me back. He said, so you really understand it? He said, yes, Father. He said, go back to Benares and study Srimad Bhagavatam again. So confused, but following his father's order, he returned to Benares, and again he studied Bhagavatam, and again he came back. Father said, did you study a third time? He said, yes. Father said, did you understand Srimad Bhagavatam? He said, no. Father said, now you've understood Srimad Bhagavatam. Now you've understood. I mentioned the other day, there's a school in Vrindavan where you can learn the Bhagavatam. Goswami family sends some boys from their family to study Bhagavad. When they come out, they know every verse of the Bhagavatam, every word of the Bhagavatam, where every word of the Bhagavatam is. You name a word and they can tell you every verse that it shows up in. And they don't know the Bhagavatam. They don't understand the Bhagavatam. I mean, what book lends itself to such, that kind of, I mean, it's, you could memorize the Quran or the Bible, but to memorize the Bhagavatam, it's like 18,000 verses. It's in Sanskrit, which is a very sophisticated language, and it has layers and layers and layers of meaning, right, and feeling and so forth. And you could be a lifetime, fully trained student and servant of the Bhagavatam as a Brahmin, Vaishnav, and your livelihood is to recite the Bhagavatam. Janam Pavani Vaishnavi Brahmo Namaha Anantakoti Vaishnavindra ki jai. Gaur Premanand.
Maharaj ki